United States, and people yearned to breathe free, as it says on the Statue of Liberty. Well, the new Statue of Liberty now is a volcano in El Salvador. And the mindset that informed Americans into building the 20th century powerhouse that was the United States are now in El Salvador. And El Salvador is now the global leader in economic freedom, freedom of expression, and we see it reflected in the faces of the people who are optimistic and happy. And that's all due to the combination of Bitcoin plus Bukele, who is, as Stacey says, a Renaissance man, a once-in-a-500-year leader. And the results are palpable. The results are obvious.
A question to you, Max. I have a question. So you were talking about $100,000 Bitcoin when Bitcoin was $1 many, many moons ago. Did you ever imagine that you'd be in the first nation state to adopt it when Bitcoin hit $100,000 as it did just a week ago?
What?
Did you? I said you were talking about $100,000 Bitcoin when Bitcoin was $1. You were predicting that one day Bitcoin would be at $100,000. Did you imagine that you'd be in a Bitcoin nation state, a state that had adopted it when Bitcoin hit $100,000?
Right. Well, on Keiser report, we speculated a few times with old G's like Trace Mayer years, and in the Renaissance, by having the best money of the time, it attracted the artists. Because money is a shared aesthetic, and it is a thing of beauty that it is supporting. Jim Simons, who was one of the greatest money managers ever, recently passed away. He said his first rule of making money is appreciate beauty. And Bitcoin is the Sistine Chapel of money. It's the most aesthetically beautiful form of money. So it's no surprise now that in El Salvador, you see what's happening to the historic downtown center. It's becoming gorgeous. The new library is aesthetically beautiful. And there's a huge call to be your best. And it touches everybody in the country, and you can feel it.
Appreciate that. Stacey, you just talked about the ethos that comes with Bitcoin, right? Truly understanding Bitcoin, what it can catalyze, right? Max, you've been telling the world about that since, 2010, right? You've been yelling about this. So you came in and then taught Bukele. You're a senior advisor to him. What was that process of him really coming to not just see Bitcoin as an opportunity to attract talent, but really starting to understand the ethos and incorporate that into his work as a leader? What has it been like speaking with him about this?
Well, like I said, President Bukele is a combination of like a Steve Jobs meets a JFK. And the Steve Jobs comparison is somebody
to Bitcoin, but it does talk about Bitcoin in a way unique for second and third graders. And Lena Seish is involved with that, as well as Me Premier Bitcoin. We've educated 80,000 bureaucrats and civil servants in El Salvador through a program that Max and I were the we do the master class on that, and Giacomo Zucco and Plan B helped with the 3-day course on that. So that is our kind of moat, in that it takes as long as it takes to go down the rabbit hole. So we're training them not just on the technical matters of Bitcoin and that side of it, the engineering side. We're talking about the history, the philosophy, the ideology, the history of money, to all of these people, tens of thousands of people from second grade up into, working in the government. So it takes as long as it takes, and we're teaching them, and we're shifting mindsets in a way that we're 2 years at least ahead of everybody else.
So what other leaders around the world are, maybe not, we don't have to get into sharing that. I'm sure you can't say that necessarily. But what are leaders asking, let's say, if they're getting in touch with you, they're getting in touch with maybe with Bukele to say, okay, what's working here, what's not working here? And also, what are the roadblocks for other leaders? It seems like El Salvador is this beautiful case study. Things are working, adoption is happening, you have these education programs. It seems like, well, why doesn't everyone else just follow suit? What seems to be the struggle for other leaders around the world who are sort of paying attention but maybe can't implement things the same way?
I think so. We're not going into any specifics yet, but I think the most important thing for El Salvador is that we are part of the world conversation. We're part of the story. We're part of the narrative at a really pivotal moment in history, and that is just so unheard of and unthought of before President Bukele existed in El Salvador as the leader, right? So it hadn't ever happened to be a place where El Salvador was part of the conversation. But El Salvador, yesterday on Fox News, we were watching the news here in the room, and El Salvador is
be writing enormous checks because they don't want to miss it. And we'll take the money.
That's fair. That's fair. For other countries that adopt this, so El Salvador came in while the price was relatively high back a few years ago, and then sort of survived this whole bear market, and you did the real work that needed to be done, education programs, training developers. But they had both of you, and both of you are, catalysts. You're both there to really support this. Do you ever worry that maybe because both of you won't exist in other countries, the adoption rate won't be as quick, or people won't, adapt to it as quickly?
I did always say that. I said that on the Bitcoin conference 2 years ago, I think, in Miami. I said, there won't ever be another Bitcoin country because there won't be another Max and Stacy in these countries. And the thing is, and a President Bukele. Okay, he's a 1 in 500 year type leader. But the important thing is that there's a steep learning curve. Okay, first of all, El Salvador was told the two pillars of their rebrand were security and Bitcoin policy. It's now a case study from INSEAD. Both of them, it's really important to understand. Global institutions and global important media.
Bitcoin maximalist. And this is something that we've done at the Bitcoin office that has been probably the most challenging aspect of the role, is to create that moat, create that perimeter. During the whole Celsius period and FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried, none of that stink got into El Salvador. Not a single person suffered from all of that hellacious shitcoining because we made it a point to make sure that the people of El Salvador were protected from that.
Part of that is, the
Give a round of applause. We could clap for that. Yeah.
The greatest rebrand in history has happened in El Salvador and is driven entirely by one person, and that is President Bukele. He's a 1 in 500 year type leader, and we were, from the very beginning, for 3 years, we were very clear on all of our understanding about the fact that it's President Bukele and his vision driving this change and the transformation. So if you suddenly introduce an equal co-partner that you have no say over, and they're becoming wealthier than you, the nation, whatever, like all the 5 million other tokens that exist outside of Bitcoin, like suddenly you have a partner.
Steps that were taken, and we don't, in 25 seconds, we don't have time to review them, but it's an actual step-by-step guide to achieving the same type of success, and I recommend any country that wants to compete with El Salvador on the stage of global excellence to study the playbook.
As Max just said, we are running a little bit low on time here. What I would love for everyone to do, Stacy and Max have been doing this for a long time. They've been doing this at the first Bitcoin conferences, 2000?